Hello and welcome to Too Fast, Too Forever. As welcome to family, we chose this one. This episode 378, Tune-Up, Relap, Recap, Lap 14. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
And I'm Joe, too.
We will be talking to Josh and Michael later. We're going to first talk to Walt and Kim. But, Joe, we have successfully escaped the 80s. We are back in current day.
Oh.
We are no longer in the 80s. We're no longer in the cults. The new lap does not start next week. We start in 2 weeks. But congratulations. We both survived the 1980s.
We absolutely did. That was actually a really good lap, I think.
It was.
I like Walt and Kim are top tier. Like, they're superstars. So it's always good having those guys on.
We will talk about the movies that we picked in the main lap, or that Josh and Michael picked for us with them. We will also reveal the next lap theme and a new format for the next lap at the end of this episode. But first, Joe, let us tarry no further. Let us go to Walt and Kim, because I am so ready for one more train fact.
What the final, the ultimate train fact.
I wonder if there will be, like, when Fast 11 finally comes out, or Fast X, lowercase I, or whatever it's called, will there be more train facts? Like, I guess train updates.
Based on what we know about those guys, if we don't get train facts, we'll have facts about something else that is just equally as mind-boggling to me. So,
well, let's go talk to those guys. Let's get our minds boggled, and we'll be right back after this.
Ooh.
We're back here with Walt and Kim, our all-lap long guests. Hello and welcome back. Sorry to say for the last time for a while, but welcome back.
Not forever.
Not forever.
We'll be back if we're not invited.
Unless we're not invited back. But, yeah, no.
You signed a contract with us that every time one of these new movies comes out, you have to join us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We signed it.
Yes.
So we have to.
Honestly, this has been very fun. This has been really fun. I'm very, very, very happy that we did this.
You say that, and I still don't believe you every time you say it.
I really, like, we, like, talk about this constantly. Like, it's just, like, it is really just, like, I will also say, from our point of view, best way to podcast. Like, just, like, parachute in, have a good time, like, come in, like it's just, like, really fun for us. And, like, you know,
all the work. We're just here.
We're just here, and it's just, like, you know, I also think that, like, taking a very specific point of view early on was, like, a really good, like, if you guys do this again with, like, other, you know, potential, like, lap long guests, like, definitely, like, viewing these films from a perspective is, like, I thought was really fun, because I like, you were able to kind of tease more out of it from it. But yeah, man, like, this was great. Like really. I'm going to make a page on my website to aggregate all of these, because I have had such a good time, like, and consider this a body of work. Like,
any chance I get to talk about things through the lens of pro wrestling, I'm down. Let's go.
Absolutely.
Let's do this thing.
Yeah.
Also, of course, you are invited to our screening, well, not our screenings, but when we go see the movie at the Palisades Mall at West Nyack.
Yes.
Inconvenient for everybody, but also equally inconvenient for everybody if you want to get up there.
That is my ancestral mall. That is the mall. Yeah, it was.
It's a big mall.
Kara too. She said that's where she used to go in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Deeply haunted. Very haunted. Can't emphasize it enough.
Do you have any inkling of what is haunting the mall?
Yes, there was a lot of graves where they built the mall, famously, yes.
Okay.
Anyway,
actually, like that's not a joke. That wasn't a Walt joke. That was a real
AMC
thing.
near my house, in the backyard, there is a little graveyard that they have built a parking lot around and elevated the graveyard because they didn't want to like smush over it. But like at the AMC in New Brunswick, New Jersey, there is a literal graveyard in the back, and it's on like Atlas Obscura, like it's on like all those like esoteric, like what it's just like, no, this is like maybe also haunted.
Hey man, this is just like, you know, we live in the East Coast has this problem where, like, you know, there's just like a bunch of stuff that happened here before we started coming up with the idea of movie theaters, and we gotta put them to your things that occurred.
They call the national parks America's best idea, but I could say movie theaters are truly America's best idea.
Genuinely up there, honestly, like as a piece of just like technology, completely up there, you know.
So before we get to your rankings, which we're going to get to at the end, I want to ask you both. I mean, obviously, you've said over and over again, it's so generous that you had such a good time here, but is there anything you learned in this lap that you either about the movies or about yourselves that you didn't know?
Yeah, I mean, I will dive in and just be like, I think that I came to appreciate the action a bit more. I think that the action in a lot of these is actually really proficient. These are very proficiently made. Like I think that the stunt work is really really good. I think the CGI is very good. I kind of like found myself actively enjoying a lot of the major action set pieces and appreciating them for really like you can tell when it gets a little tired and then they're just like okay fuck it let's make a new magic trick let's strap a safety in the car right they'll continue to kind of push themselves on that front I think to their benefit and I think that that is definitely something that was somewhat incidental to obviously what I was like on the mission to kind of follow but did come to very much enjoy that these are really proficiently made action flicks you know.
Kim?
I really like the looking at this through the various frameworks that we did. Obviously, wrestling for me, but like the D&D stuff that Walter did for this entire lap was just. I mean, it's fascinating because you can really see it and like dissect these movies in a different way that I don't think anyone's ever done that before.
Yeah,
which is strange because you've done this 14 times. But like,
nope, we've never done it.
If y'all have never done it. No one's done it. But and those things were just so it was a really cool exercise.
Yeah.
To do throughout this process.
It also just like kind of forced us to meet it. I think we really tried, which isn't always very easy to do for critics or people who are engaging with a piece of media. Like I think that we really did try to meet it where it was and appreciate it for what it was trying to accomplish. And like give it a little bit of grace that I think that it can be very easy to kind of pull away from franchise media. In a way, you know, I think that this kind of comparative thing is like, you know, people assume sometimes that like movies are made by morons, and like that's not always the case. Like they don't always succeed at what they're trying to do, but I think that like you know, wrestling and D&D and even like other things in that kind of liminal space of like soap operas and just like comic books and art that isn't intended to end, right? Like art that is intended to tell a generation, decades long story and continue to experiment and evolve with it. I think that like that is like kind of underappreciated in the medium of cinema just because cinema isn't really built for that. It's built for 2-hour experiences, right? And like I kind of appreciated what it was trying to do. And we'll talk a little bit like I have some broader thoughts on like my takeaways from the D&D element of it. But like I do think that like trying to meet this where it is as a work that has actual bona fide ambition behind it and creative ambition and like really does come from a creative place that other franchises don't, I think was a fun exercise. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, with that said, before we pivot off that, do you have a most D&D moment of the entire franchise so far?
I really do think this franchise isn't afraid to let the people fuck up. Like, there are moments in this where they say, like, okay, here's how I'm going to solve the problem. And then they try to solve the problem and the car starts breaking down. Or they start to fight somebody, but that person's stronger than they are. And I think that this franchise will have people consider a course of action and then try different skills to solve it over the course of it. And like that's not to say that other franchises don't, but like other franchises have oftentimes like, you know, savvy people who are good at their jobs, right? Your James Bond, right? Like is going to succeed because of how clever and smart he is and how he's just like the top kind of guy. Whereas in this franchise, these guys really they always find a way to position themselves as low status people working up against higher status, more powerful, more engaged, more ruthless, more cutthroat people. And, you know, that just ability to continue to make you root for them, even as they scale up the power ranking, is just D&D, right? Like, I mean, like, you know, so much of movies is just like, how do you demonstrate that your guys like the lower status on the back foot, not most likely to win, even after all that you've accomplished. And I think that just like the calculated escalation that this franchise has taken, where it's consistently and appropriately raises the stakes in each film so that it just exceeds the powers that they accomplished in the previous one, is just very classic D&D. Like that power scale is just like no other franchise has really mastered it, you know?
No other franchise really has had the opportunity to like do a thing like this.
Suss
like,
it out in 10 movies across,
Like people can complain all they want about these, but like this has had more literal runway and figurative runway than most other franchises. Like there's a lot of sandbox to play in here, which is plenty of time for everything.
I don't know if I want to get too much into a rant, but I think I will. Which
the Walt Hickey story.
Okay, I have like thought a little bit about this, and like, I think that a fun thing about viewing this from the D&D perspective is that I think that it is also placing it. I think that I came away with from this exercise with a better understanding of what I think this franchise understands that it is. Obviously, a lot of the storytelling styles is pulled from Gary Gygax, pulled from D&D, pulled from that kind of stuff. But like D&D was pulled from other stuff too, right? Like Gygax at the end of the first edition of D&D listed all the authors that he had read a lot, right? You had a lot of Robert E. Howard, the Conan the Barbarian author, right? Which is like a very epic saga in like a Bronze Age kind of environment where you have these almost like kind of like pre-Abrahamic local god kind of things going on. There was like the Harold Shea stories from like Elsbrog de Camp and Fletcher Pratt. And those were very much like an interdimensional traveler, experiences different mythological universes and plays around with them. H.P. Lovecraft was a very, very big inspiration, a guy who like saw mythology and then wanted to see what we could kind of drive at it with modernity and all that kind of stuff. And then like a lot of it actually shouts out like A. Merritt, who is a big inspiration for Lovecraft as well. But really much like his big thing was like the Ship of Ishtar, which was a 1924 book, which is essentially like an archaeologist is sent careening through time to mediate a dispute between the gods Ishtar and Nergal, right? And like, so it's less direct from Gygax, but when you start getting into some of the elaboration of like what went into the Forgotten Realms, which was a separately kind of designed element that got glommed into D&D, it's a ton of Tolkien, right? Like you have the Ranger class, which is definitely riffing on Aragon. You have halflings, which used to be called hobbits, but then they had to change it and all that kind of stuff. And like Tolkien, if you look at what all those guys, like the guys who inspired D&D were following, it is like Tolkien specifically was like the Norse legends, right? And like those era of mythology and that kind of stuff. And like the reason that I'm bringing all this up is that like just as I think that Vin Diesel is standing on the shoulders of Gary Gygax when he's designing this kind of thing, I think that we're standing on a lot of shoulders that were like creating modernist riffs on legends and myths that we would call sagas. And like I think that like one reason that the Fast Saga is I think very interesting to me is that like I think that when they started calling it the Fast Saga, we should take it at their word, right? Because like sagas are a very specific type of of story that like we know like you have a lot of like the Norse legendarium and the Norse mythology and all that kind of stuff, but like the original sagas, the Icelandic sagas, were stories of great families. And so I do actually think that they're being very deliberate when like there's a lot more going on here potentially. And like as I was like going through some of it, I think if we start viewing it on those terms, then a lot of the things that we get caught up as like plot holes make a lot of sense, right? Where like, in sagas and in legend, right? Like if Loki flips gender between two different stories, that's just normal. That's Loki bullshit, right? If like Balder is killed in one but then shows up later, that's fine too, right? And like I think that like when we don't care if he becomes a horse in one episode and then comes back later and that kind of stuff. And like there's ambiguities in who's who, there's ambiguities in how they're related to each other. Like there's these kind of like trickster elements of all that kind of stuff is very much like what these are going on, right? Like I was going through just like the Norse stuff, right? And is there any kind of similarity between like the sagas of like the Norse legends, right? And what like the Fast Saga is. And like, yeah, there's a lot. Like Odin has countless sons, an ever-growing family, right? And like it's always inconsistently sized, but nevertheless it kind of comes and goes. Like when Odin slays Ymir to seize the raw material that creates the world, how different, I ask you, is that from when they seize Hector Reyes' millions, right? The Nightshade device constructed by Owen Shaw, all that different from Gungnir, the ultimate weapon that always finds purchase, right? The God's Eye is Odin One Eye, right? Like clearly, a god is a direct association with Odin, right? The snowflake virus that will end the world, how is that any different than the inevitability of the Thimblewinter, right? Project Ares named for the ram, Thor has ram, like, the alliance of the Torettos and the Shaws, is that any different than the war between the Aesir and the Vanir concluding with those families eventually combining into one? right? And Woden's title of Wodans, which means Lord of the Frenzy or Leader of the Possessed, how different, I ask you, is that than Drift King? Yeah, all right. And Brian's Beach in the Dominican Republic with frosty coronas and never-ending street races, that is the promised Valhalla, where we shall drink and battle in the company of the victorious dead. All right, so I think my takeaway from this shit is, number one, I need a stronger medication, and number two, my assessment that it is Dungeons and Dragons is actually naive, right? It is only surface level. That this shit goes way deeper than that, and that the Fast Saga is a saga. How?
I like that you were like, should I? I don't know if I should say this, and then you just bust out like a college level thesis, like analysis. I also wish, in hearing that, the thing I wish the most was I was in the room where I'm sure Vin Diesel pitches, let's call it a saga, because it feels like the Fast Saga has to be like a compromise. Like it should be the Toretto saga. But
Sure.
like that's bad branding for like people who don't know. Like people see F9, they're like, I don't know what that is. But F9, the Fast Saga is like, oh, that's Fast and Furious. But like the Toretto, they might not know. But it's a Toretto saga. It's his story. It's their story. It's the family story.
It's the family story, and again, like I think that viewing it as like with the same logic that you view folklore is actually good because, like, again, like we have had how many characters come back from the dead, but like in like folklore, like how many times does Anansi kill Leopard, right? And how many times does like do you have the knowledge in one space in the world and then it breaks as part of a coyote story? And then how is that different than the God's Eye thing, right? Like Gilgamesh and Enkidu, some of the earliest possible like folklore and legends that we have, right? Like they used to be foes, they fought in the very very beginning, but then they became brothers. One of them dies rather early on, right? Like there's continuity errors in the Epic of Gilgamesh, but we don't wince and we don't get weird about it because we view it as what it is, which is like a folklore kind of story, like a folk hero kind of thing. It's just like I think that we should kind of view it where they want it to be viewed, and the fact that they called it a saga this far in is like, yeah, I think that that's where it's at. I think that we should view this as a very epic story, right? And I think that that's kind of what they want. They want to be viewed as the organization's like, who cares what Etion is, right? What cares is that mysterious people will offer you gifts of iron if you offer your name, and how is that any different than the legends of Europe and the fair folk and all that, right?
You're making me want to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Ooh,
Yeah, maybe.
That sounds like a fun activity for right after.
Yeah,
I feel like I learned this time that, on like Walt's point, is that like we often give Vin all the credit for the story, but at the same time like point out all of the missteps or like things that they've forgotten and things like that. In this perspective that you're giving generally like this now, it's made me respect Vin's storytelling choices much more than maybe I did before.
yeah.
Like they seem more intentional, they seem much more thought out and complex than us being like, why did that person come back, or like why did they go away and just disappear? Like, yeah, like it's part of it, but at the same time it's like, oh no, there's intentionality behind a lot of this.
Like the devotion to continuity is a novelty of modern storytelling, right? Like people, first of all, that's not how like world works, right? People enter and leave people's lives all the time. If you look at like the earliest legends that we have, some of the persistent stories that we have, there are ambiguous reasons for stuff. There's things that aren't explained. Friends become enemies pretty quickly. Enemies can become friends pretty quickly. It's basically in service to the feeling that you have right now in the story that needs to be told right now. And I think that like this kind of on the fly style of Gygaxian storytelling that Vin Diesel embraces, like, yeah, you are going to have bigger questions. You are going to have things that don't make sense. But like, it doesn't matter if it makes sense in the long term. You're supposed to be how you feel right now and what that inspires in you. And I think that like viewing these movies on those terms, I think is a much better experience than trying to figure out exactly what happened to who and why,
It feels like a good segue into wrestling, because that's something that's been, a wrestling storyline is a forever thing, right? Like what becomes canon stays canon.
There's a Wikipedia page.
Yes, the John Cena's Wikipedia page is a book, right? Because it's everything he's ever done ever.
Yeah.
And like that goes back to the 50s and 60s, like all the way back there. All these characters that have been weaved together, they still reference people who haven't wrestled and who are dead, like in real life, but their characters are still there. All of their deeds have been recorded, and the people they interacted with, they left their mark on the other characters and their children. There are second, third, fourth generation wrestlers out there whose
Cody
stories
Rhodes.
integrate their parents, like the current champion Cody Rhodes. Like these are, it's a wild way of storytelling, and these are things that again you suspend that level of disbelief in at some points when it doesn't make sense because it's the right thing in the time, right?
Yeah.
Like there's retcon stuff, there's things that change, there's things that change 5 minutes before a match happens. Someone decides, oh wait, we're not going to go this direction. We're going to fully change the outcome of this match and the winner and the effect on the characters, right? That this happens constantly. And like the thing with wrestling, for them they've simplified that mode of storytelling by having every climax be a fight.
Right.
So in the same way that like Game of Thrones characters will scheme and scheme and scheme for a whole season worth of episodes, it'll finally end with the Battle of the Bastards or whatever the thing is. But there's these competing parties that are scheming and just talking shit and just going back and forth and harassing each other's families or burning their houses down. These are all things that happen. And then in the end, the only way in professional wrestling to settle a score is where, Walt?
No holds barred in the ring.
No holds barred, Hell in a Cell, steel cage, whatever the big final
pay-per-view fight is.
Yeah, there's literally no other way to settle this score aside from two people beating the hell out of each other.
Yeah. In a quarter-mile street race.
That is the crutch that wrestling uses. It doesn't have to settle anything in any other way. It's always settled that way. But that's I feel like that's a requirement in something like this. It's so complicated with stories that last decades that like you have those beats and you use those beats and you see those beats happen in TV shows and movies and everywhere else where like there's a climactic battle, right? That's the point at the end of the movie, which is at the end of every one of these Fast and Furious movies, there's a 20-minute or more giant battle sequence to settle things, and finally you move on to the next one. That's where wrestling resides. It's in that formulaic realm.
So with all of that said, what is the most wrestling moment in the entire franchise?
The most wrestling moment of the entire franchise to me is when you really I really felt like, oh, is this wrestling? Because everything's wrestling, but really seems like wrestling right now. It's in Fast 5. So 5.
Ooh, okay. Mm-hmm.
It is the creation of what people in wrestling call a stable, where you finally set like the teams and the battle lines and the main characters develop relationships in a way that we hadn't seen up till then. When you get the full cohesive, here are the people who are about to commit this heist, and they hug and they say, hey, we've interacted in the past, but now we are officially joining together to create the Toretto stable or family and to do this thing. And then from there on, everything is seen through that's the structure.
That's the us. They figure out the
that's
us.
The us.
And whatever the them might be doesn't matter.
People join the us. People
the family.
Them. But that is the stable. That's Degeneration X or the NWO or the Bloodline right now. Whatever the big stable is, that's that. Yes, they are crotch chopping their way across the world, just saving lives. That's but when that stable is made, that's when this really, really becomes wrestling.
Yeah.
So we talked about it a little bit in the Fast 10 episode, but I would love to hear where you guys think. I think it's probably safest to assume we will get one more movie. Who knows if that's going to I mean, we're in a very weird state now in terms of like what the future holds. But assuming we get one more movie to wrap up the story, where do you think it goes? Do you think it's satisfying? Will you be satisfied? Will the audience be satisfied? Where does Fast 11 take us, the film family?
I think it is like, I'll talk about comic books because, one reason that I think that we've gravitated around a lot of these things is that to your point, Kim, wrestling, D&D, comic books, Fast and Furious, these stories are they're designed to persist, right? And like, I kind of think that like, that is one of the only ways to tell stories about families. Like, obviously, the Skywalker saga was kind of direct created in post, and like the issue with the Skywalker saga is that like it's the same plot lines over the course of three different trilogies across nine different movies. And like it's a slow gradual evolution, whereas like that isn't how families work. Families are complicated. People enter them for weird reasons. There isn't that kind of level of simplicity that it's kind of a cyclic ring cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I think that the inevitability of this is like, you're never going to have the last issue of Spider-Man. You're never going to have the last issue of Detective Comics. You're never going to have this is just by sheer momentum alone. Even if Dom's story ends, which I surmise that it will, if not in 11, then in 12 or whatever they end up having to do to kind of wrap this up, like that, this era is going to end. And as they've kind of really been planting a lot of, possibilities, I think that at a certain level, to Kim's point, like when you were describing like how wrestling always works and how these movies always works, I was actually like I thought of a Howard Ashman idea, and Howard Ashman was the composer and writer of lots of the Disney Renaissance songs, and basically that entire era of like Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and that kind of stuff. And he was a big musical theater guy, and like he introduces this idea of like how do musicals work, and musicals work where like you talk and you talk and you talk and you talk, but then when you start feeling so strongly, you start singing. And then you sing and you sing and you sing and you sing. But then when you start feeling so strongly that you can't express it in song anymore, you dance. And that is inevitably how that trajectory works in a good musical, right? Where like you just get so full of feeling that you're provoked into other stuff. And in wrestling, you talk and you talk and you talk and you talk until you have to fight, and then you fight and you fight and you fight and fight until you have to no holds barred, Hell in a Cell, end of the line, whatever you got to do, right? And in Fast and the Furious, you talk and you talk and you talk and you talk, and then you race and you race and you race, and then you fight and you fight and you fight, and like that is a good winning formula, and you can do that not just with Dom Toretto, you can do that with the folks around him, you can do that with the kids under him, you can advance the timeline a few years and figure that out. And so like this format feels like they cracked something that is not going anywhere. And whether they need to take a little time to creatively reshuffle it, that's fine. But like, we're going to be getting another like 10 of these.
And what's going to keep the fans happy is not tying up the entire plot of Fast and Furious.
Yeah,
because this is so eternal, right? What they want is each individual character's storyline to end in some kind of satisfactory manner. Like tie off the people you want tied off, as if they're retiring, right?
The way that they ended, Furious 7 with Brian, magnificent. They could do that. Like they can do that again. And like I think that they will.
Do we get Brian in the next? Will he come back for the last iteration of these films? Will we get a form of Brian beyond he's babysitting?
I think I forget if we're recording the Fast X on this episode back to back, and I forget if we refer to the new Top Gun movie Maverick.
You did very briefly.
Yeah, it's like they'll do the Val Kilmer thing. They'll figure out a way to make it very like it'll be a sentimental moment, not a big damn hero moment, but it'll be they'll mention it. It might be a voice thing only, that kind of thing. But I think they'll do something. But I think that they'll keep it very, very reined in.
I think it has.
Is there one character you want to see back?
Johnny
Train.
I don't know.
Suki.
I think they got to bring this thing in. They're worryingly close to the Miranese knot that George R.R. Martin got stuck in, where they have so many fucking things going on.
Did you say Miranese knot?
You heard what I said. The internet knows that I'm right. Anyway, this is a thing.
Yeah, I know he's stuck in Marine. I got it.
Yeah, but that's like, the internet. He said it. Like anyway, but yeah, I think that like they gotta wrap this thing up. They've already kind of teed up a lot of the Next Generation folks. They've got to have a big damn heroes moment, call curtains on a few of them, and then move on, right?
So you think a few die? We have to kill off a couple, right?
Listen, I'll put it this way. I went into an extended metaphor about how clearly Vin Diesel takes a lot of inspiration from Norse mythology, and I think that it has to end in Ragnarok, baby. And at the end of Ragnarok, not a lot of people pull through, and you get a rebirth, you get a renewal of the world, you get a new opportunity. The dragon, the great dragon Jorah Glumlin is slain, right? But a couple of people take a couple pretty big L's, and that's okay because you get renewal and rebirth, right?
What's the dragon's name?
Fuck off.
Kim, what do you want to see in Fast 11?
I want to see while watching this, it's almost like the audience is challenging them for a bigger action sequence every movie, and they know that, and they take that to heart, and they try to one up whatever the thing is before, right? At this point, the expectations are just unreasonable, probably. Like, what do you want them to do? Just making these things longer doesn't make them better either, right? The ball scene in Rome is so long.
Yeah,
it is so long.
Yeah, but like the finish is good. Like the wrecking ball thing is great.
There's plenty of stuff
there's
in it.
Too much shit in the middle.
But there's too much shit in the middle. Like, what is? I want to see them real. Like, there needs to be something. They're gonna get the moments in this movie where people in the theater feel good moments where you cheer like it's Endgame or whatever. There's this big heroic moment and everyone cheers. I think we're gonna get that. I don't see any reason that we wouldn't. What we want to see as people who've watched these movies so many times is, again, it's just something new, something really fun where you're like, holy shit, that was crazy. And I don't think Space did that in 9. I don't think anything in 10 did that. I don't think we've seen that.
Will we get time travel? Is that what's left?
That's what we've been
saying.
saying.
It's not like a holy shit thing, though. That is just, oh, look, it is Endgame.
Yeah. I think that they back away from that. I think that they'll figure out other ways to make it good. I think that it'll be a lot of people, like all the people that they've kind of worked with will come back. It's not too hard to shoot a couple people in the cockpit of a car. I'm actually more interested in some of the interpersonal beats rather than how they actually kind of structure the finale. I think for 3 movies they've been teasing is Ramsey gonna get with anybody on the crew, and I think that people, there hasn't really been that kind of moment in this movie. There hasn't been a big romantic finish, as it were. And I do think that they've got to cash in on some of this, obviously due to the post credit scenes, they've brought back Gal Gadot, right? And so that's a possible really good moment that's coming up, obviously. But they've got to kind of figure out where they're going with some of the personal stuff, because again, the characters are really they're very we've kind of come back to this time and time again where there are different archetypes that they're very much living in, right? Han is very much in the the roguish, suave kind of face of an operation kind of thing. Obviously, you mentioned the big wrestling moment of okay, we need 2 precision drivers.
We always need 2 precision drivers.
And they'll all
get anything done with fewer than 2 precision drivers.
I don't know. I don't even know how I'm going to get home without 2 precision drivers.
We got it.
Well, remember, Kim has the transportation allowance. You can get 2 precision drivers from Bloomberg dollars.
We got it. Don't worry.
But either way, yeah. I mean, I have actually a little bit of confidence for the remainder of the franchise. I think that clearly they have a story that and I think that Vin knows if he can stick the landing, then he'll be good. He'll have succeeded in telling his story.
And he came back to Riddick.
Yeah. Hey, didn't they just start filming on 4?
Uh-huh.
Fury and Friday.
Fury and Fridays. Yeah, we've been doing Fury and Fridays.
I was looking back. For some reason, I don't have rankings from Walt. Walt, you were on an episode a while ago, and I guess either we didn't ask your rankings then, you didn't have rankings then, or I didn't write them down. Yeah. I have rankings for Kim back when there were only 8 movies out, so I'm curious if these hold up or not. But are you both ready to give us your rankings of these movies, either from favorite to least favorite, or least favorite to favorite?
I am ready.
Who wants to go first, and are you going to count down or count up?
I can go first. I will count from best to worst.
Okay. Please hit us with your rankings.
All right. Number 1.
Who does best to worst?
We can do worst to best.
That's the best.
All right.
What are you talking about? I didn't care for 2. No shit.
We're just going to invert the norm here.
Okay.
And now we're going worst to worst. Okay. Least favorite to best. Most.
Yes.
Most
Thank you.
Favorite?
Yeah.
Least
favorite. They're all perfect movies.
Of the Fast and Furious franchise. Mine is 4.
4's in last place. Okay, 4 was still in last place last time, too. Okay.
4 was in last place. 9, 10.
Wow. Okay. Even with Momoa. Okay.
8, 3, 2, 6, 5, 7, and the OG number 1.
And Hobbs and Shaw exempted from the list.
Oh, yeah, it's exempted.
Mm-hmm. Hey, that's interesting.
You had Fate fall a little bit. You had Furious 7 and Fast 5 flip-flop from 2-3 to 3-2. And Tokyo Drift and Too Fast both moved up one.
Nice.
So, similar, but we also have the rankings of the new movies, which not great endorsements from Kim.
Understood. It's fair. You need to let them percolate a little bit, maybe. Who knows?
Just give it a marinate.
When we get 10 and more of these, they might be, halfway point.
You gotta put them in the bag, put them in the fridge, see what happens.
Yeah.
Joe, you know what I also realized? That next lap is lap 15, which means you're going to have to give rankings at the end of next lap. Not this lap, but next lap.
That's true.
In about a year, you will have to give rankings.
Sounds perfect.
All right.
I'll have a good one for this lap, though. I need to think of one. I'm thinking up a good rankings.
Oh, yeah, if you guys don't know, Joe has rankings he has real rankings every 5 laps.
Uh-huh.
But he does, rankings, he might just do, most 80s movies from 1 to 10 or whatever. So,
Sure.
who knows?
You guys should do a bottle episode where two people debate 12 Angry Men style. What is the worst film in the franchise? Or the best film? I think the best film is, well, you're wrong, but either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what's
Go ahead. Get into your
best or
rankings.
worst.
Yeah, I'll get into my rankings. Shit, yeah. 2 is my least favorite.
Okay.
Oh.
But here's the thing. I think it's a pretty good movie.
It's a lot of fun.
I'm saying it's not a bad movie by any stretch. I think it's got ups and downs. 9,
Okay.
4. And now I want to be clear. Everything after this is a pretty good movie. Like a pretty good movie.
Okay.
10, solid flick.
Okay.
Really dug it. Good times. 8, 3.
Okay.
I would put Hobbs and Shaw right above 3.
Really? That's high.
So I'll put it in there.
I think it's pretty good. I think it's got some good energy. I think it's mostly held together by its villain, but either way, some of these are. Okay, now we get to the top 4, right?
The Mount Rushmore.
The Mount Rushmore, as it were, yeah. The Fast and the Furious, number 1. The first film, I think that is the 4th best film.
Okay.
6, 7, and then 5. It's got to be
Of course.
5 is
Of course.
5 is you're watching a butterfly emerge from a fucking cocoon.
Well, we have the same Mount Rushmore. Just
I know.
in a different order.
Yeah, but imagine if you met someone who was like, I love Thomas Jefferson more than Abraham Lincoln. You would think that they were fucked up, right?
That's because Rushmore.
Yeah, I know.
Was
But that's
the
what I'm
problem
saying. But that's what
in
I'm
this
saying.
situation.
I'm just saying, just because we have the same Mount Rushmore doesn't mean that it's cool that you have the different favor than I do.
You guys put a lot of respect on Seven's name, which happens a lot, but as taper.
There was a stretch where people gave it in chronological order of rankings received.
Sure.
7 was 9th, 3rd, 8th, 6th, 4th, 5th, 7th, 3rd, 4th, 8th.
I think it's really gaining in credit just because it's very impressive what it managed to pull off, and also I think the set pieces are very good in it. I feel like it more directly integrates a lot of the characters that were just kind of thrown together in 5. It feels like it really becomes what it wants to become in that movie.
Like,
But
you know how they jump a car from a skyscraper to another skyscraper?
it's pretty sick.
But then they
Honor.
jump a car from the second skyscraper to the third one. Like that. I mean, that is just. Come on.
When I've seen these in theaters with you, Cam, I have oftentimes been very drunk. I think I was phenomenally drunk during
Phenomenally.
and I had an amazing time.
So was I. That's a really weird experience. I think me and all of my friends that went to go see 7 were very drunk. Rachel fell asleep in the theater. Now that you said, I don't know why we all came in real hot to go see 7.
I remember in 7, I came in with flask, but also beverage that I would mix it in
Same. We made mixed drinks in the theater. I'm with you.
It was.
Did we see the same movie? Were we in the same?
Same theater.
Yeah.
Astoria, Queens.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's one very important thing to do before we say goodbye for now. Not goodbye, but it's never goodbye.
So long.
It's just see you later. See you again.
Yeah. See you again.
We need a train fact. We need the last train fact. I guess future when Fast 11 comes out, you come back. If we all remember, I'm sure we will. We'll get a train fact then. But this is for canonical reasoning. This is the final train fact.
Here's the canonical train fact.
Who's going to tell you?
The ultimate train fact is
there is no train.
we applied and received a $100,000 grant from Airbnb to purchase a rail car, move it to the woods, renovate it into a livable property, and then install an embedded murder mystery within it. that I and several other people, including Kim, are writing in a sort of operate your own Sleep No More style experiential situation. In a gorgeously restored 1948 Pullman rail car that sleeps approximately 4 people comfortably, 5 with a little bit of wiggle, in the beautiful Catskill Mountains. And it is our little side project, and it is very silly.
About
That
2
is
north
so
of
cool.
New York City.
Yep.
And yeah, we can keep updating.
We'll let you know when it's like opened up, so that if you have
Please, I'm in a book. Yeah, for
renovations
sure.
remain ongoing. but
renovations
it is
are ongoing.
close now.
Very close. We'll do a little bit of friends and family for a bit. We'll be in touch, fellas, and then we'll probably end up listing it. I think spring is a good target for when we're really trying to get it out
to
there.
get the full commercialization of this train car.
But it's a deeply silly side project.
yeah, it's going to be beautiful.
It sounds amazing.
Extremely immersive, right? When you step into this rail car, we want you to feel like you're in the
It's got
late
like a
40s.
I forget what facts we've divulged, but it's like wood paneling on the inside, a really really nice bar. Like it's neat. So yeah,
I can't wait to see it.
I feel like somehow this is both a surprise and also the only inevitable outcome
Right? It has to be.
for the entire
Yeah.
season. You know?
It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect, though.
And
I'm actually really
just buy a
stoked on it.
train.
yeah. Hey, sometimes you and your bros buy a train.
It happens.
Train
Well, thank you
bros.
both so very much. This is going to come out in just about a month.
Cool.
So, do you want to guess what you want to plug then?
Yeah, I think I got some stuff. I've got 4 things. I'll plug
Okay.
4 things.
It's very exciting.
Number 1, I am the executive editor of a website called Sherwood News. We
Yes.
write about business news. I think we do a very fun job of it. If people are interested in business news, they should follow Sherwood News, which can be found at sherwood.news. Second thing, I have a newsletter called Numlock. It can be found at numlock.com. Numlock, like the key on your keyboard. It's about fun numbers buried in the news. People enjoy it. It's come up a few times on the podcast, actually rather organically. Very, very fun. Third thing is I wrote a book. It's called You Are What You Watch. By the time that this comes out, it'll probably have been out around a year. It'll potentially be out in audiobook. I actually don't know the exact dates of that release, but it's available wherever books are sold. It's full of fun stories and very fun things. If you liked some of the more crackpot conversations about, the plotting of this kind of stuff, I think a lot about movies and I have a lot of good times doing it, and it's very, very visual and fun. You can find that at You Are What You Watch. It's in wherever. And then the last thing is, I know that, you have a lot of supporters following this, but like, if you enjoy this podcast and you do not yet support it, you should consider doing so. If you like things, like, you should find a way to support them in the manner in which they ask you to do so. You guys have a Patreon. I know that you have a lot of really fun people in a Discord as well as online. But even if you can't or want to support financially, just message them sometimes and tell them that you enjoy the podcast. And it's always nice.
It's the best thing. It's the best thing. It's our favorite thing.
And if you enjoy this stuff, tell people about it. And so if you enjoy this podcast in any way, don't hesitate to spread the word about it, because it is a very good thing, and you guys have a really good fan base and listeners. It is very nice hearing from them. So that is my 4 things.
That's very sweet. Thank you so much, Walt.
Walt's always way too sweet to us.
Good luck topping that, Kim. What do you want to plug? Coming out in a month.
Oh yeah, I got one thing. It's just what I do, right? So I'm a reporter at Bloomberg News and Bloomberg Business Week magazine, and a bunch of big features out this year. There's one about Nike, about the man who made Nike uncool. We have one about Michael Rubin and how he took over the trading card industry.
That was dope. That was
through a bunch of deals with the various sports leagues out there. We have the zombie mall king doesn't want to be a bottom feeder forever. One guy bought up all these different dead mall brands and retailers, and it's created an empire. Then he bought Sports Illustrated and now wants to be a little bit more, a little bit cooler, not just be the zombie mall guy. So yeah, check out those features and more on Bloomberg.com and Bloomberg Business Week.
I like how your beat is usually just like people who are cool and want to monetize that, people who are not cool and want to
Be
hang around with
cool
people
and
who are
then
cool.
monetize.
It's just like people who are like, be cool.
What's going on?
They either have a lot of money or a lot of coolness, and they're trying to get more of the other one, and it's very fun.
Everyone's trying. Everyone's trying to get a little piece of that and then monetize it, right?
Yeah.
So, I cover celebrity and athlete business deals. So anything about all your favorite celebrities doing doing business deals with brands and private equity and venture capital and whatever, and a lot the sportswear companies as well, Nike, Under Armour, Lululemon. You all buy that stuff. Check out what they're doing.
Kim, you have the coolest job ever. I think that if they made like G.I. Joes that had jobs, I would want mine to have Kim's job.
I would love a G.I. Joe of myself. That
like not a Barbie, but like the boy, like the full
I would
boy
also
version.
think a Kim Barbie would be
a Kim Barbie would be sick too, but I didn't want to start there. But I'm just saying, like, we had like a nice Kim Barbie, and his job was to just be the coolest reporter ever.
That's the plan.
Well, thank you both once again. Listeners, stay tuned.
So
We'll be right
much.
back after this quick, not commercial break with Josh and Michael to talk about their 80s cult movie lap that we just completed. We are back now. A week or two has passed since we recorded the last segment. Maybe more. Maybe a month has passed. Joe's across a continent. I went back a continent. We came back. We'll talk about it more on the Life in the Fast Lane. But with us today, we have the masterminds, the architects, the twisted minds behind the 80s cult movie lap. We had them on at the beginning, the last tune-up relap recap. We have them on again right now. We have Joshua Buckley and Michael Moser. Hello, gentlemen.
Well,
Hey.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you once again for sponsoring the entire lap. My first question, the big question, how'd we do?
I thought it was
question.
really good. Yeah. Mike, go ahead.
Y'all did amazing. Definitely we picked some good ones for sure. And then the fans picked some really great movies
Right?
that
Yeah.
I didn't even think of. So I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I would like to commend you all. You came in hot. Okay, so good job all around. You guys, those guys, everybody. Excellent choices.
I was a little bummed you guys didn't like the Ewoks movie that much or at all.
I didn't not like it. It's just minions with different
It's-
characters.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
not talk
Oh,
about
by the way, we
it's the
didn't
minions.
get into this, but I will say, and Joey can attest to it, after we finished recording with Walt and Kim, Walt said, I said stopped recording, and he said, Joe, you're absolutely right. They're just minions. And I was like, thank you. But I had already stopped the recording, so it's not recorded. But Joey can attest that is the truth, the whole truth.
He did.
He did.
Okay, so actually on that topic, Josh and Michael, we'll start with Josh. Can you tell us which ones you picked and why? Because we sort of guessed, we sort of teased early on. I think
we
might have
figured it
revealed
out pretty
some
good,
in the
right?
last one.
For the most
Josh,
part.
which four or which five or however many you picked, which ones did you pick, and what was your thought process behind those as sort of like showcase for this theme?
So the 5 I picked, and Joe too had this spot on, or
Okay,
almost
good.
spot on, because he said at the Willow episode that Josh, he was pretty sure I picked a lot of like kids action adventure movies. And yes,
Yep.
4 of my picks were Willow, Ewoks Battle for Endor, Never Ending
Mhm.
Story, and Labyrinth. Now the question is, can you guys guess what was the 5th one I had?
I don't know. What was the
So
fifth
did you pick
one
them to like
picked?
sort of fit that genre that we?
No, I had no
defined?
idea. I honestly, I didn't even realize I had done that. I just went with movies that I enjoyed watching growing up, and the Ewoks movie is still one of my 10 favorite movies of all time.
Really? That's cool.
hmm
I have the list, but I don't have which ones were picked by you guys versus which ones were picked by other submissions. So
Don't worry about that because we're not really talking about the patron picks because that's behind the paywall. If you want to find out what other movies we
Amen.
cover, toofast2forever.com. This is the highlight. These guys, these picks. So, Josh, which ones do you pick again? Can you go through your 4 and then I'll try to guess the 5th?
I did Willow, Ewoks Battle for Endor, Never Ending Story, and Labyrinth.
A lot of green. I am going to pick. I mean, all these movies have a lot of green. To be honest, I'm going to guess your 5th.
I will give you a hint and say it was not Princess Bride.
Well, okay.
You leaving that off the list.
I think that was too obvious.
Yeah, that was too obvious.
Highlander, I think, would be Michael. Footloose, Scrooged. I'm going to guess Troll was your fifth.
No.
I would guess Scrooge, too.
Nope.
Nope. Mine was Predator.
Okay.
I am a huge Arnold Schwarzenegger fan. I could have just done all Arnold movies, honestly. I mean,
that was great.
So
we
cool.
had who did we have on with us? It was Mark, right?
Yeah, Mark was on that one.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know what was funny? And Mike saw this like right after you guys did that episode. A TikTok trend came out where it was take the end credits from Predator and put it with any 80s sitcom TV show, and the music matches up perfectly. It's pretty crazy.
I think that's all like those 80s movies musics are all kind of similar. So like, yeah, I get it. That probably nails it, right?
Yeah, it was so weird that watching Predator end credits and then you start hearing, Full House or Step by Step and it matches so perfectly. It's uncanny.
Now Mike had a strategy behind his picks.
Several of mine were ones that I actually grew up on, that I was allowed to watch. And
allowed to watch? What does that mean?
Yes, allowed to watch.
Okay.
When I was growing up, we weren't allowed to watch certain movies and TV shows and stuff because they were evil and of the devil is what we were called.
That's shitty. I mean, like I had the opposite, which is like my parents didn't give a fuck what I was doing, so it was pretty nice.
So like Princess Bride and Spaceballs, Footloose, Scrooged, stuff like that were allowed to watch. And I grew up on Patriot games, which y'all did an amazing job on. But anyway, the rest of them were ones that I have wanted to see, but haven't.
You used the Joey methodology.
I did.
Yeah. Plus, he also knew you guys don't like musicals and Christmas movies.
Love musicals.
Yes.
That was the original Mike when he came up with this idea, wanted to make the whole lap musicals and Christmas movies. And I was like, nah, man, we don't want to kill their audience.
I wanted to have quite a few, but maybe not all of them.
Well, you did a good job. Watch good balance, yeah.
By the way, Joe, there is a new Christmas movie that is out that should be atop your list now, maybe right below Die Hard.
Is it the Taylor Swift Christmas Chiefs movie?
No. It is. It is Terrifier 3, a great Christmas movie.
Oh, I don't know that one. Okay, adding it to the list, bud.
Number one in the box office.
Just came out.
Yeah, watch the first two first because they are really good. I haven't watched the second one yet, but I've heard good things.
Now, Joey, do you like the Saw movies? I don't think you're a very gory guy, are you?
I don't mind gore. I've only seen the first handful of Saw movies, but
Rachel's a big fan. She likes all the Saw movies. We usually watch through them like about once a year.
How have you not seen the Terrifier movies then, Joe?
I have no idea.
Gotta watch them.
On the list right now. Here, pen and paper.
Are there any movies that you did not pick that you realized either after you submitted the list or as we were talking about movies that you wished you had picked instead, or in addition to, or if you had more picks, you would have?
Ooh, that's a good question. Mike, can you think of any?
So I probably would have added Rocky Horror Picture Show, just because those two, Little Shop of Horrors and Rocky Horror go hand in hand, and they're both cult classics. Maybe a good Disney movie just to lighten the load a little bit, but
Moana.
I was surprised nobody gave you guys the Goonies.
I've never seen the Goonies, believe it or not. I've never seen the Goonies.
Yeah. Only parts for me, bud. Yep.
Yeah, but I probably if I had more picks, Beetlejuice I think would have been on there, especially with the sequel having come out.
Top tier.
And then of course Die Hard.
Yeah.
Or any Arnold movie. I like I said, I could just pick all Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
What was the one with Danny DeVito brothers,
Twins.
Twins. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Twins.
I love that one. I actually made Rachel watch that in Kindergarten Cop because she had never seen any Arnold movies. So we did like a little tour, and I gave her some of my highlights.
Well, I will say two things on that note. Number one, oh no, it wasn't that. I was going to say two network related things about the things we talked about. Brian did cover Goonies on High School Slumber Party, so if you want to go there with often guest Jordan Pullen Clark, talked about Goonies on his show. But the other thing I was going to say was that I thought there was an Arnold marathon at the Draft House in Yonkers where I first met Kyle and Brian, but I met them at a Rocky marathon.
I remember.
Yeah. But there was an Arnold marathon that Mike and I went that we saw 5 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, which was very cool. So...
Was it silly Arnold or was it just like straight
It was a
action?
mix. It was a mix. Cool. Let me get the list.
Here's a question that ties in with Arnold in you guys' podcast. If Arnold was in a Fast and the Furious movie, would he be a villain or would he be an ally?
Well, villain turned ally, duh.
Yeah.
It's the easiest option. It's like the shortest route between 2 points, right?
That's how everybody goes, right? You know?
Yeah. But it'd be more fun to see him just come in and be part of the family, although like we shouldn't keep expanding it. But it would be fun to have Arnold in these movies, and he's somebody that we've never really talked about possibly being in these. I think he's a little old right now, but he could play like Mr. Nobody's sidekick type situation, or like a foil to Mr. Nobody or something.
Or it could be Dom's uncle.
Yeah,
and they could do another flashback scene, and he's like there in the pit with them.
I was going to say that his son is already in the movies, but that's Clint Eastwood's son, because Patrick Schwarzenegger is also an actor, and he's also in stuff, but not in this movie. So the Arnold Marathon at the Yonkers Draft House in February 2017, February 4th, 2017, which might have been Super Bowl Sunday, I don't know. Total Recall, Eraser, Kindergarten Cop, The Running Man, and True Lies. I think it's a pretty good mix.
Oh, Running Man.
That is a good mix.
They're remaking The Running Man with Glenn Powell coming out. So
what a surprise! Glenn Powell's like the new hot sauce, right?
So what was you guys' favorite films this lap?
I mean, Predator is the best movie that was picked, I think. Predator, there was a reason that we led with that, other than because I just wanted to watch that as quickly as possible. When you gave us a list, I was just like, oh, Predator. Predator's the one.
Yep.
Like, I liked a lot of the weird ones, which I know that like some of you guys didn't pick. Like, I obviously love Scrooged. As someone that hates like musicals and Christmas movies, that one's really good. Like, that's always top tier for me. I don't know. There's like a good range. I think that like I expressed like some of the ones that I was really surprised by, right? Like something that like really like was, I was like, oh man, I've never heard of this, seen this, stuff like that. So, but it was a good mix. Like I said, I commend you guys all around. So excellent.
I will say I did not realize how many of the authors of these books hated their movies until y'all figured it out. Like, what,
insane.
3 or 4 of them were like, yeah, no, I hated this, so I didn't want anything to do with it. Like, that's insane.
We did uncover some weird facts. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always my favorite part of you guys' podcast is the very obscure facts. I didn't know Bill Murray quit acting for 4 years after Ghostbusters. That was a pretty interesting tidbit there.
It's all Joey. He does all the good research.
Mm-hmm.
There was another question I was going to ask based on what we just said. Oh, well, actually, no. The most important question, though, is we picked at every episode we covered a movie. Do you have, from any of these movies that we covered, the most 80s moment? Like, if you, or it doesn't have to be in one of your, I mean, it would be better if it was in one of the movies you picked. But is there a most 80s moment in one of these movies, or when you think of 80s cinema, like what's the
big
moment,
theme,
what's the image, what's the object, what's the thing, what's the genre, what's the whatever that you think of as like, this is the 80s?
Humanoid creatures. You know, we had Troll, Labyrinth had a lot, Neverending Story had Falkor and a bunch of others. Of course, the Ewoks movie, even Willow, you know, you could argue on that. So I felt like that was a lot of 80s stuff. And of course, David Bowie is ultimate 80s, right?
Top tier. Good pick. Yes.
For me, it was more of like the futuristic style, or like in Spaceballs, it's, you know, outer space, or, you know, Labyrinth, it's this weird world they live in. It's that kind of futuristic fantasy land time.
Surrealism.
Yeah, it's that fantasy time of the 80s. It's just pretty much all the ones we picked were in that genre, I mean, you can't go wrong with a good classic fantasy.
I agree.
By the way, can we say Labyrinth did not hold up well at all?
Most of these did not hold up well.
You know, we talked about this a little bit as we were doing these, but we wondered aloud if some of them would have done better if there were other movies around them, or if like when we most recently did Willow, and we're like, oh, that's what like a well-made, big budget, good actors, good director, whatever movie could be. If doing that earlier would have made them look even worse, like it's all sort of in comparison.
But without the like scope and like, you know, not having seen them all, it's hard to kind of plot like the order that hits the best, you know? Sometimes, like, if Joey and I have like a succinct plan, like a little bit behind the curtain of like what we want a theme to be, and like we know the movies that we are going to pick, like it's much easier to put them in an order that we think is a natural progression. So going in blind to a bunch of them makes it a little bit harder. But I think that overall it had a good flow, right? Like leading up, it worked well.
I agree that leading off with Predator was the way to go, though. Gets everybody hyped.
I will say, and we have one more segment on this episode after we say goodbye to you guys. Joe and I are going to talk about the next lap. I will say the next lap's pit stops are going to be in chronological order for no other reason than I just put them in order. That's not the theme, but it's just, we're just going through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hard to do that when every movie's an 80s movie, though. Although, maybe not. I don't know.
You could have done it in release date order.
Could have done the Randy cut.
The Randy cut of it would have been good.
Josh asked, what's your favorite? What was your least favorite to watch?
Ooh.
Are you just asking that question so that we can dunk on Ewoks again?
No, because Joe's going to pick Little Shop of Horrors.
Besides Ewoks, what was like the one you dreaded having to watch?
I don't dread any of them going in. If the movie's bad, if the movie's like, it's always actually more interesting for us to talk about it if the movie is bad or if both of us aren't on the same wavelength. It's a lot harder for us to talk about a movie that we both gush about because, like, what can we say about Predator, right? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't necessarily like fault a movie. I don't go into a movie looking at it like, oh my God, why are we watching this? Unless it's like, you know, one of the porno Brian picks or something like that. Like, I generally don't even like dread watching anything. Like, there's nothing that like I go into that I'm like, oh, I can't sit through this movie or this is going to be painful.
Yeah, I think the ones that I was unfamiliar with this lap, I wasn't dreading. I was like, oh, I actually finally get to watch this. And then like ones like when I watched Neverending Story, I was like, oh, I should have watched this 30 years ago. Like watching it as a 36-year-old.
The disappointment of the
first time, it's just like,
yes.
I wasn't like dreading looking forward to watching Neverending Story, but as soon as I started, I'm just like, yeah, it's kind of like what I was maybe worried about, that like I just watched at the wrong point of my life. Absolutely. But like there wasn't any of these movies I was just like, oh no, I can't believe we have to watch this again or for the first time or whatever. They were either movies that I liked or I'd been wanting to rewatch or I'd never seen, was curious about, and it just, you know,
and then
was at the wrong point in my life.
No, hits the perfect thing. I'm glad that we talked about Ewoks, but I think having Heather on was like really great for that movie, right? Like she was a perfect fit.
Yeah.
By the way, congrats Heather for becoming, what was it? She's like head Star Wars nerd in the nerd crew. What did she just win an award for being? I sent it to my friends, but she got like adopted honorary member of like the lead costume Star Wars group or something like that at Comic-Con the other day, and I was like laughing.
She was inducted into the 501st and Dark Empire Legion.
Yes.
Oh, good for her.
Nice.
Yeah, like my Star Wars friends were like, "Oh my God, that's like actually a serious thing," and like, so congrats to her. But yes, I think so. Yeah, and like that's it. You know, Joey lines up the great guests that align with the movie. So like, even if something like Ewoks like doesn't hit really well, having Heather there for the Star Wars context is amazing.
Josh, Michael, do you have any final thoughts about the lap, the picks, anything else you want to say? Now is your time to shine in the tune-up relap recap.
Now, I'm just curious, when Mike and I team up and do this again, what type of lap we do.
I raised the price, though. The price has been raised.
It's exponential now, boys. You started you let the floodgates open. We're going up.
That was always the goal, though.
And
it was
joke,
after the first one, it was going to go up. Because there was something I was joking about. I don't remember if I said this to you guys or not, but at the beginning of the year, you know, I was no longer in 1999 on the podcast, and I was just like, I'm gonna be more conscientious about the movies I watch this year. Like, I watch a lot of movies, but I still like wind up watching a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily want to watch or whatever. And the beauty of Too Fast is I can pick things I want to see or see again or whatever. And you guys are like, cool, we're gonna pay you money to like pick movies that you don't know about. I'm just like, oh no, like it wasn't like it didn't turn out to be bad.
It was
like,
really funny. Joey like had made a conscious effort and like announced this to me that like he had like fully come around. We had like heard Joey's whole saga.
This truly novel idea of watching movies you want to see.
Yeah, and then he was like, yes, this is what I'm gonna do. And it was like days after you guys were like, we got a lap planned, and he was like, shit. Like we were just like we were so close.
Even pick the lap. Yeah.
It was funny.
Well, just be glad that I talked Mike out of the lap that was going to be pure musicals and Christmas movies.
It wouldn't have been bad. Yeah, it wouldn't have been bad. We would have had a good
but this
time
lap was
boys.
better, right?
It was better. It was better. You did excellent.
It depends on what musicals and what Christmas movies you pick. There's lots of good ones.
Yeah. I mean, come on. I could have picked some really bad ones, but I decided to be nice. My final thoughts are I was really glad to hear y'all significant others jump in on most 80s moments. It was really cool to hear their take on what is 80s.
Rachel, not born in the 80s, by the way. So her 80s moments.
And neither Margaret. Not same thing.
Yeah. So it was really cool to hear their take on it, not being in the 80s, even though I was born halfway through the 80s and grew up mostly in the 90s. But it was so it was really nice to hear a different perspective on the 80s.
Well, thank you both once again.
Hope we did you justice, boys.
Listening and supporting and picking the movies and joining us today. And again, like Joe said, hope we did your picks, the movies, what your vision for the lap was. And again, if you got another lap, we're ready for it. Or if anybody else wants to like come in and like one
you
up,
lay down the fucking
available.
Gauntlet today, boys.
That's
also,
right.
I will say again, the same way that we said for this, don't do it. It's too
Don't
much
do
money.
it.
Don't do it. It's a
Don't.
bad idea. It's a dumb idea. Save your money. But if you want to give your money to us, Too Fast,
you can pick one movie a lap. It's much cheaper. Do that.
Exactly.
Well, I definitely would encourage some other fans to do it, and like me and Mike showed the way to do it. Team up together.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 or 3
Two-person
people
maximum. This is like a bathroom in a nightclub. 2-person maximum. Okay, that's all we're doing here.
You're at the Pearl. Be respectful.
That's
right. Thank you
right.
both so much.
Thank you,
We
guys.
will talk to you both soon.
Keep up
All
the
right,
good work.
guys. Y'all have a good one.
All right, Joe, that leaves us with just one more bit of business. Well, 2 more bits of business because we have one thing to let people know about, but 2 things. Again, not just one. It's 2.
What,
We
how do you
announced
keep-
the next lap's theme.
Did you want to count to 2 yet or no?
There's always one thing we do, and then there's another thing that's going to be changing. But
Okay.
the theme for next lap and the format for next lap, both going to be new.
Yes. Okay, this is very fun. Joey pitched this to me. I think it's an absolute brilliant idea. I'll let him tell you guys.
The first thing I've ever said that you like.
Pretty much. Besides, I'm the handsomest, smartest person you've ever met, which I liked the most first. But
sure.
Okay.
So our theme next lap, and our patrons have known this. If you go to TooFastTooForever.com, they have known this for forever. Also, while we're on the topic, shout out to our patrons, Cassie Wilson, Nick Burris, Alex Ellen, and Justin Kleiman, Brian Rodriguez of High School Slumber Party, Wes Hampton, Jerry Robinson, Dan the Duke, Hayden, Renato DiDonato, Michael McGann, Lane Middleton, Lindsay Lewandowski, Nate Milton of the Kings of Sport, Jason Rainey, Tom Price, Mike Gallagher, Josh Buckley of Whole Lot of Wolves, and heard from both of them, Michael Moser, there we go, Christian Larson, Tara Newone, Aaron Willozen, Natalie Absolute, Randy Carter, Josh Gularm, Alex Walsh, and Jessica Collins, a.k.a. Montez. Thank you all for supporting us at the $5 a month level or above. So these people have known this theme for so long, but the next lap's theme is Oops. we should have covered this already. And this is movies that, for whatever reason, we have not yet covered on the podcast. That
probably ones that we've talked about a million times, referring to in the episodes that never covered. Yes.
So we're doing some Paul Walker movies because our Paul Walker lap was like before we only did, like 4 of his movies or something. And he's not got a ton of movies, but there's a couple of those that we've not covered. There's some crossovers. There's things we've talked about. We've got a good mixture, good selection of movies to cover there. The patron picks for the Patreon exclusive behind the paywall episodes are all over the place in a very nice way. Food all over the place. But I'm very excited to just sort of clean up some odds and ends, loose ends, and sort of just be like, okay, well, we didn't cover this movie. We've mentioned it 12 times.
It'll narrow it down a little bit too. And also this kind of saves patron picks from being wasted, quote unquote, on things that we should have covered. So we'll do the due diligence for you. And there's movies that we talked about a billion times that we probably should have done. Now you don't have to pick them either. So there you go.
Also, as a reminder to the patrons out there, we have about half the people have gotten their picks in for this lap. It doesn't have to be on theme. It can be literally any movie you want us to watch. So whatever movie you want us to cover, just send that in to us and we will cover it. If you want it to be on theme, it's just basically anything to do with the Fast and Furious or the actors of the franchise or cars or whatever that we haven't already covered.
Amen.
Bigger thing, the thing that Joe loves, is we are changing the format of the show. Still going to be weekly, but
we're not talking about movies anymore.
We're not talking about movies anymore. We're talking about
We're going to start a whole new
Wolverhampton podcast. Wolves. What's the team?
Yeah, Wolverhampton Wanderers. We're talking about politics and things white guys don't cover. Sports, definitely not movies though.
We're kind of going back to our original format in that Fast and Furious movies are basically once a month, but we're still 1 episode a week. So some months there'll be 2, but instead of going movie pit stop fast lane, we are going Fast and Furious movie, fast lane, pit stop, fast lane. So there's going to be twice as many fast lanes. There's going to be, I think, if I count it right, 22 this lap. So that means more news, more Fast and Furious minutes, Tokyo Drift, more running the VIN, all sorts of good stuff.
Most of this was inspired by Joey being like, it takes a long time for us to get through a movie with the minutes. This way, to us, is a way to crank the minutes out faster without adding them back into main episodes and making those longer.
This also gives an opportunity to read more emails as we get closer to, theoretically, at least the final movie, if not more movies. There'll be more stuff for Vin to post. There'll be more stuff just to talk about. There'll be lots of fun, good stuff. Plus, more life updates and so on and so forth. But
and also
every other week is going to be Fastlane.
Gently cuts in more bonuses for you, too, by the way. Because, doing fast lanes and then, you get, a bonus quicker. So I think it's good all around. If you guys hate it, let us know if you like it.
It also means that the laps are going to be a little bit longer, which is not a bad thing. No. But it means that our patron picks will be... there'll be even more bonus content per lap on the Patreon, because we're still going to try to release one every 2 weeks. So there'll be some stuff that we picked, some bonus commentary, some bonus pit stops, some bonus whatever. So toofast2forever.com for all of that. But just more fun, just changing it up. But again, every Tuesday on the main feed, every Thursday or Friday whenever it's edited on the Patreon feed.
Yep.
All good things. But Joe, we have covered what Walt and Kim thought about this lap. We covered what Josh and Michael thought about this lap. We haven't done...
What?
I don't know if you're ready for this. We can also do this in a future episode because I know that you're on another continent. We need your rankings. They're not the official rankings. Do you have rankings for this lap?
No, I don't. Give me a day. I'll get them. What are we doing next? Fastlane?
No, next week's pick is a bonus. So in 2 weeks, we are going to do the Fast and Furious Lap 15. But next week, you can do it. We don't have a guest next week. Next week's episode is our Halloween special. We are doing Sung Kang's directed Shaky Shivers.
Yeah, this movie is the movie we talked about that was on Shudder for 2 days and then never again and then disappeared for a year and a half.
But now you can get it.
Now you can get it. Yeah, yep. So I'm actually really curious about this. We wanted to watch it when it came out, and then, like we said, there was that kerfuffle that we didn't know what happened to it, so it should be interesting.
Wes saw it, and I think he liked it, but I don't remember specifics.
I think Wes was
but we'll
the
talk
only
about that next week.
one that saw it, yeah. But you had to have Shudder, and they put it up for 24 hours. Then it was really, really, really strange. Either way, we're now covering it because it's available, so we'll do our due diligence.
So we will get Joe's rankings and also do my real Fast and Furious rankings. But the important thing, though, is that next lap is lap 15, which means at the end of next lap, Joe actually has to give his real rankings of the movies for the first time in 5 laps. But this will be his last goofy rankings. I'm guessing, my guess here is that it's going to be movies on a scale of 80s-ness, but I don't know. We'll find out.
That's exactly what
next
I was. That was precisely my thought, brother. That's what I had penciled in my brain. I need to like have reasoning and have logic behind these for you guys. Explain myself.
And it'll be like, because it's pretty 80s. Be like, all right, cool, good reasoning.
Yeah, if I like did it right now, I'd be like, that's kind of fucking 80s, and like whatever. So like, yeah, let me do some thinking.
So, any other things to say this episode before we close up shop?
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for everything. Thanks for listening. Thanks Josh and Michael for picking movies. Thanks everybody that submitted a patron pick. Thanks for showing us new movies. Like I always say, I feel like I'm in the weirdest film club curated by all of you for fun movies for me to try and watch, and I appreciate it. And I just thank you guys.
And once again, thank you to Walt and Kim for joining every Fast and Furious movie this lap.
They're gems. They're gems, and like if you're in the Discord, you know that I send them all my love all the time. Those two guys are great, so can't thank them enough.
And speaking of closing up shop, I want to mention that we are broadcasting live from Dwight's apartment. You can see the art in the at toofast2forever.com
and Joey's feet pics in the toofast2forever.com.
Thank you to Dwight. Thank you for the feet pics. You know, Dwight loves feet. You know,
yeah,
that's all the good stuff. But for all things Too Fast Too Forever, go to cageclub.me, facebook.com/toofast2forever, or at toofast2forever on all the socials. Email us, family@cageclub.me. Check out our Patreon page at toofast2forever.com and our store at cageclub.me/shop. And come back next week for Sung Kang's Shaky Shivers. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm Joe too.
And that was Walt and Kim for every episode this lap, and Josh and Michael, the twisted minds behind this lap's theme.
Nobody do this again. Nobody do this again.
Don't do it again.
Don't do it again. Seriously, just don't even. Don't do it.
I think it's like $50 a month now. It's stupid. Don't do it.
Stupid.
And
don't do it.
We will tell you all about it
when we see you again.